Hi, my name is Priyal Himanshu Kapadi and my student ID is S2247411685. This is my SIT Object-Oriented Programming Task 4.1p. In this, we are talking mainly about how to handle exceptions, how to handle errors and like exception handling. Uh, Here there I have made like I have explained all the 10 kinds of exceptions. I'll go through each one of them separately. The first is null reference exception, where the input can be null. We get this type of error. So to handle such, because at times we might need a null input, which is not generally required, but still to handle that manually, what we can do is we can use try and catch. What we can do is try that if string is inputted as null, then we can write that this will cause, if we try to write the if we try to write the string dot length, it will cause null reference exception. So what we can do is we can catch that exception and write line that the following error was detected by using ex dot get type and with a message, that is ex dot message. Similar is with index out of range exception. Index out of range occurs when we try to access a particular element of a list, array, dictionary, or any kind of data type which has indexing. We try to access the element which is out of index, which is not in the index. As in over here the index is 0, 1, 2, and if we try to access the element at index 5, then this might cause the error, and hence using the same try, which this one causes exception, and then if we catch an exception as ex, then what you can do is write the following error is exception dot get type, and then typing the message exception dot message. The commented over here can trigger serious runtime issues. So I have commented it over here. Though there are only two types of that is stack overflow exception and out of memory exception. Stack overflow exception occurs when when there is an infinite kind of loop which can overflow the size of the stack, which the and you know the recursive methods can um, cause this kind of exception, and it is not safe to trigger. So I have demonstrated it in comments using the same try and catch. Out of memory exception is also not safe to trigger. This happens some when a data is not when a data is not really in the memory, this kind of exception occurs. And it is not really safe to trigger such exceptions because that can cause serious runtime issues. So we should never manually try to catch them. We should make sure in the code that we don't really go through or face any kind of exceptions like this too. And even if we are supposed to throw it manually, we can, which is not advisable, but we can do it using try and catch, but it is not advisable at all. Also, just give me a second. Yep. Also, we have got divide by zero exception. This occurs when we try to divide 2 by 0 or any XYZ number by 0. It is not mathematically possible. So that causes the the error, that triggers the error. So here I have defined a as 10, b as 0, and when we get c as a divided by 0, that is a divided by b, this causes the error division divide by 0 exception. And we can catch it using try and catch error, just the same ex dot get type, that is exception dot get type, and then exception dot message. Argument null exception is when an argument is passed as null, this kind of exception occurs. Print length is kind of function, and then if we try to pass a null exception, that is, instead of this null, we should have typically written something which is a string, but here we are passing null, so this can cause the argument null exception, which can be catched easily by using try and catch. The same method, argument out of range exception, because when an argument is accessed, it is same as index out of range, but here we talk about the argument passed and not the particular array. So if we are passing an argument, we are passing an argument as an array, and when we try to access that, uh, when we try to access the element which is out of that index, this causes the error. We have done it using try and catch as well. The format exception is when we try to, and when it is caused usually when there is data discrepancy, I can say data type discrepancy, like um integer is number, like number is an integer, but we are trying to parse it using string. So that is like the data types are not really matching, and this can cause the format exception. um Argument exception is when we try to put an invalid argument into something, invalid kind of argument, which is not true. The argument passed is not true. And this should not really happen in our code, because as a good programmer, it is not a good practice to give input as something invalid. So we should not really like do we should not really try to catch this error, but we might need to check, like we might need to make sure that we have passed the correct argument. So that is the reason we can use it. But for the functionality matters, I don't think it is like a good practice to catch such errors manually. Like it will not help the code. We can use this to catch the errors, like to make sure that our inputs are valid. But other than that purpose, a programmer should make sure that they don't face this kind of errors. um this is system exception. Normally, we catch specific exception instead of system exception, but still we can throw it. We can use like demonstration of system exception and do it using the same thing. The print length is nothing but these are the functions which we are using in all the above try and catch things, like print length, access element, validate file type. Yeah, that's it. So let me run the code and .NET build. The problems over here are nothing but warnings because we have passed those null and things over there. This is causing warnings. Nothing other than that. That is null reference, null reference, null reference, possibly null reference, and we are trying to manage that only. So it's not a big deal. Like our task is only about managing those null reference. So we can, for now, uh, forget about those. Yep, forget about those warnings and let's run the program. As you can see, here we will have all the 10 kind, no, not 10, 8 errors listed because 2 are commented. Yep, there we go. We have got our, hmm. This was my task. Thank you so much.